What's up, good people? Listen, it's Miss Turner coming to you with yet another Trucker Connect. And today is a conversation piece. And this is a conversation that most people are not willing to have openly, but it's one I feel as though is vitally needed, especially considering what's going on. And that is mental health. Now, before you click off, I want you to hear me out. This is not something that deals with only specific people or crazy people or people with issues or the negative stigmas that follow it. This is something that pertains to everybody. And I thought it would be cool to bring in my high school classmate who is now a family and marriage therapist to begin to start conversation with what is mental health, what does it look like, what are some red flags, what are some coping skills that we can use while we're going through this, and the importance of therapy. So without further ado, let me introduce Mr. Gary Wardlaw.
For me, it is an honor. Whenever I get a chance to talk, it's always fun, and I always like to jump at the opportunity because as a therapist, I sit with people for an hour and I might do 5 to 10 minutes of talking. So anytime I get to actually talk more, it's always good.
The cool thing about him is that he's not only a therapist, but he is also trying to break the stigma as it pertains to mental health through fashion. So step back, let him see it. Let him see it right quick. Let's get right into it. So we've heard the term mental health, but I want to ask you, what does mental health mean to you? Most of us have formulated our own definition, but based on what you've studied, what you found out through the years of school, what is mental health?
Okay, so I think the first thing, you really hit it on the head when you opened up. Mental health is really just your psychological well-being. You put it flat out there. It's like, how well is my mind doing, right? You think about mental health on a continuum, the same way you think about physical health on a continuum. You have where you're in really good mental health or mental space versus if I'm not, right? So if it's, for example, the big example is always, depression. Like, you can have sadness and that is okay. It's a very normal emotion for people to feel. Some people, an incident could happen and their sadness might kind of spike up a little bit. It might make it harder to do things. You might have a big event where sadness gets turned into depression. And when that happens, that's when you really want to become aware and not let the shame of going and talking to someone get in the way. So I think about mental health is where am I on the continuum of it? So, and it's the absence of mental illness too is a big way to say it.
So I liked how you talked about sadness and depression and how many times we need to realize that those characteristics of us being human, such as sadness, anger, fear, anxiety, those are our natural responses that lets us know that there is a red flag or there is something that's going on. It's something that we need to pay attention to. I think it's important as a human race that we understand that we are not these superhumans that can walk around suppressing our emotions and not expect for us to have explosions or something come out. So it's important that we pay attention to those red flags. So what do you view as some of the red flags that we need to be paying attention to, especially considering what's going on in the world at this time?
It all depends, right? You want to make sure that you are really aware of yourself and how you function at baseline. Like, when I know that I'm healthy, I'm aware of when I'm healthy. Mm-hmm. I know what I do. I know what I don't do. I'll use myself as an example. For me, when it comes to stress, which right now a lot of people are dealing with, because we're in COVID, because we don't know what's going on. The unknown typically creates anxiety, right? The limbic system in our brains, like, we want to know what's next. We want to be prepared. And just COVID doesn't allow us to do that right now. COVID, we live in this kind of gray area. So I first want to say that if people are experiencing any anxiety, any, racing, heart's racing or their mind's racing, they can't sleep, it's normal because of what's going on right now. COVID is a huge physical threat. People, unfortunately, are passing away from it. People are catching it. However, it is in my opinion, it's more of a psychological and social impact that it's having on us because of the unknown. So for me, kind of some red flags. I stress eat. So when I am feeling nervous, feeling uncertain about things, my first thing I go to is eating a lot of carbs at that, or a lot of sweets. So I know that's not my baseline. So for somebody else, it might be sleeping. If I'm having trouble sleeping, if I'm having trouble getting to sleep, if I'm having trouble sleeping too much, right? These are all red flags. If I see myself excessively crying or excessively worrying about the future to where it's like that's all that preoccupies my mind, that's another red flag that, hey, something is going on. Another big red flag is if it starts to impede you being able to do the things that you normally do. Right. So, if you gotta be at work Monday through Friday at 8:00 and your anxiety or your depression or your just concern is making you get there at 9:00 or 10:00, or you're not getting your work done, or you can't focus while you're doing your work. These are all red flags or signs that, hey, my psychological state might be a little off.
Mm-hmm. As you stated, it's black and white. There is no big terminology or anything. It's simple. You realize that, hey, this is not the normal me, or hey, I feel a little off. And so that becomes that indicator that something needs to be dealt with at that particular time. I mean, I personally had to do a couple of walkaways because I said, hold up, this doesn't feel like me, or I don't like my tone, or I don't like the way that I responded to that particular thing. And I just realized, hey, this is not something that I want to be a part of my future. So I had to take a walk back and I had to begin to look at those red flags. In many cases, we find ourselves self-coping. And when it comes down to self-coping, we could find ourselves digging ourselves in a deeper hole of depression, of anxiety. Self-coping could come in the way of drug usage. Self-coping could come in the way of suppressing our emotions and not talking about it. Self-coping can come in the way of alcoholism, promiscuous activities, anger, frustration, quietness. Self-coping can be in so many different ways, lashing out irrationally, that we need to begin to identify those red flags so that we can make sure that we are not being self-reliant, but we say, hey, I'm worth more and I need to go get help. You all know through Trucker Challenge that my life got to a point where I said, hey, I cannot do this by myself, and I had to seek out with counseling. So GP, I'm gonna ask you right now, what are some red flags, or what are some things that we need to be aware of as it pertains to self-coping so that we can make sure we don't cause ourselves to go into a deeper depression or deeper anxiety, deeper anger. Somebody once described those things as being a hole. And the more that we consume self-coping that may particularly be negative, we find ourselves going deeper in that hole. Alcoholism, promiscuous activity, drug usage, anger, lashing out. Those things cause us to go deeper into the hole. And so the person wound up saying the moment that we find ways to deal with those things that cause us to go deeper, we find ourselves being able to come up. So say for instance, getting a therapist, talking to someone, letting somebody know, hey, I need help. You begin to pack dirt into that hole until you find yourself coming out of it. So what are some ways that we can begin to know, hey, this is not a healthy way to self-cope?
No, that's a great question. And I kind of want to answer it in a different way, a different way, if I can. And I kind of maybe want to talk about what we can do.
Okay.
And be able to intertwine what we probably should stay away from. If that's okay. And I'll use this shirt as a framework, right? So whenever it comes to coping, you hit on one of the biggest things I'm talking to my clients with right now is like, how do you cope? And you have healthy ways of coping, and you have unhealthy ways of coping. Right. So I think the first thing is like, you have to ask yourself, like, what is in my coping bag? If I had a coping bag that carried around, like, what is in it?
Right.
And so let me break this shirt down. It's like, I pray, for me, I have a huge, strong belief system, like faith belief system. So for me, prayer does a huge thing for me. And I teach all my clients this, and it centers me. Somebody might not pray, right? They may not get down with prayer, but they might get down with meditation, right? So either way, the idea of prayer or meditation is, how do I center myself? Like, how do I bring myself back to balance? There's so many things that are pulling us in so many different directions, right? Work, uncertainty, relationships, husband, wife, children. Like, you have so many things to put. Like, how do you say, like, I'm going to get myself back to a place where I can quiet the noise, center myself, recognize that I do have control, and be able to move forward from that place. So a good way to cope with stress is being able to sit center. And it's when you find your center, I like to take people through, like you find your navel, you put it 2 inches above your hand, 2 inches above your navel. You might repeat a phrase, like you work on your breathing first, 2 inches above your navel. You work on your breathing, right? Deep breaths in, hold it for 5 or 10 seconds, release it, right? Find that center, okay? Then once you do that, you might add, like as you continue to breathe, you might add a phrase, this too shall pass. Or you might say something like, I am strong, like something to affirm what you know to be true about yourself or what you want to be true about yourself, but you might not believe it right now. So it's an idea of affirmation. So you're praying, you're finding your center, you're speaking affirmations. And then from there, you kind of move to, all right, let me do a body scan. Like, where am I holding my tension in my body? All right, so you start from your head down to your toe, and you can just kind of walk yourself through, okay, am I feeling the tension in my neck? All right, if I feel it there, all right, I'm telling myself to let it go. All the way down, all right, I feel it in my stomach, I feel it in my knees, I feel it in my feet. Once you're able to do that, you can teach yourself that I do have control. So that is one of the biggest ways, and it takes practice. It's real easy in theory. I could run people through it right now, but it takes practice. So this idea of like, how do I center myself through prayer, through meditation? I think the second thing we should probably do is be able to talk. Like, a lot of times we cope with things by internalizing them. But like you said, we have to get it out. We have to externalize the things that I'm struggling with, whether it's to a coworker that you trust or a family friend that you trust, a supervisor, but somebody you feel like they can be a sounding board to you. Don't just keep it, and you can maybe express yourself through art or through some form of videos or blogs, like just get what you're feeling out some kind of way. We don't do ourselves a favor by keeping things inside, but that's what the world teaches us. That's what our family might have taught us. You don't need to be talking about that. Like, keep that to yourself. Like, no. Don't keep it to yourself. Like, that is not a healthy way to cope, because when you do that, you internalize it, then you turn to the drinking or the promiscuous behavior or the party, and that's when you start to cope in an unhealthy way. And then the last thing is, like you said, like you plugged it in, like go see a professional. Same way you would go see a doctor, same way you would go see people go to the hair salon or the barber and they get their hair done, they want to look fly. You're not gonna let just anybody off the street touch your hair. You're not gonna let anybody on the street just speak into your physical health. Like, you'll go see a professional. Same thing with going to see a therapist. Like, you want to be able to say, look, I'm not at the best place right now, and I'm gonna go to someone who is trained. Took me 2.5 years to get through my program, 4,000 hours to get licensed. I have a pretty good idea how to help people through difficult mental health. At least I hope I do. My clients think I do, so that's a good thing. But it's this idea that seeing somebody that's professionally trained, there's no stigma around it. It's okay. It's okay not to be okay. It's not okay to stay not okay. So these are all ways that we can cope, right? These can be tools in our coping bag. And whether you do all three or you kind of just dip your toe in all three at a certain time, but it's this idea of, how do I get healthy coping habits into my coping bag, is what I would say.
Right. That's dope. So as we know, it is not a one size fit all. The same way you have to try on clothes to see how it fits, or try on same way you have to try new foods. It's the same thing that has to take place as it pertains to our mental health. And to know that if something's not working for you, you keep in your mind, I'm worth more. And you seek it out and advocate for yourself until you receive what's needed. So the thing I guess I get so excited about, man, we went to high school together, and to see where you are now as a therapist and changing lives as GP, it's just mind blowing. I think in many cases we have in our mind what a therapist looks like, but in actuality, like, we miss the people that ultimately could save our lives just by assuming that they're supposed to come delivered in a certain package. And it's important that we begin to break that negative stigma that's associated with mental health. I mean, that was what Trucker Challenge was all about, for us to be able to realize, hey, I'm not the only one that's going through something. Everybody has a story. Everybody has a test. And that person that you're desiring to be like, and you think that they have the perfect life. In actuality, they had to overcome some obstacles too. So it's just important for us to realize that we all serve a purpose, that we all matter. And if I could be honest, this thing affects all of us, not just you, not just me, not just this particular demographic. No, it affects everyone. And so it's important that we begin to understand that it's not just us that's going through these things. All right, man, in closing, to Churchill and High School family, what are some closing words that you would like to share with us?
Look, break down the stigma. All right. I think high schoolers, students are just, the generation is so innovative. They're so well connected. Know that when you're going through something, even when it's difficult, it's better to go through it together. So if there's a stigma around it, be the one to step up and help change the culture of the stigma around going out and seeking help. Honestly, I've worked with a handful of teenagers and they don't know what coping is. So educate yourself. Even for the teachers, educate yourself on like what does healthy coping look like, especially during this time, especially with so I got about 4 or 5 teachers on my caseload right now, and every single one struggles right now with schedule. Their schedule is so off. You guys invest so much into these children day in and day out. The emotional energy, the intellectual energy, you're drained at the end of the day. So now that you got all this time and it's kind of, no hard schedule. I got teachers that can't get to sleep till 3:00 in the morning. And now waking up, so I'm having to get them all right, stick with it. Teachers and students, stick with the schedule. If you find yourself getting more anxious or more irritable throughout the day, like you said, it's a good red flag. Be able to schedule in something like a walk or reading a book or, whatever brings you joy, whatever brings you peace. Be able to do that in those moments where you're like, man, if everyone around 2:00 p.m., I get real irritable. Go for a walk.
Right.
Go for a bike ride. All right. Educate yourself. If you know something's not right within me, ask mom the question, ask dad the question, ask a trusted teacher or a mentor, hey, something's wrong with me. Something's off with me, not something's wrong. Something's off with me. And I don't know necessarily how to navigate it. And then those people can lead you to the right person that could give you the help. I think what else would I say? I guess be courageous, because once you start seeking out for help, people are gonna kind of look at you side-eyed, but just be confident that, you're doing what's best for your mental and psychological and emotional well-being. And that's more important than anything. You are valuable. I think once you keep things internalized, you'll start to get that message or that ruminating thought that it's not worth it, or I'm not worth it, or it's not important. It's not that important. But take those thoughts, hold them captive, and just be able to replace them with truth. On a schedule, open up, talk about it. So remember that it's okay to not be okay. Family time, being able to connect, whether it's with a board game or a card game, but being able to connect with family is going to be super important. It's very practical, but important. And then make meaning. Find how do I make meaning out of this time that I'm at? That would probably be how I would close it. A lot of my clients are saying, how do I make meaning out of the time, out of this season, this COVID season? And that's been really helpful.
As you all know, I always say L2BD, learn, live, love, to be different in a world full of copycats, because it's too many people that's allowing this situation to cause them to throw in the towel or to just shut off or to not even just try to find the brighter side of things. And so I need you to understand that this affects all of us, not some of us, not one or two of us, not just you, not just me, but it affects all of us. And this is definitely something that we are going to get through. This is something that will not consume us. This will not defeat us, and we will come out stronger. And so I need you to understand that this is a great self-reflection time. You can begin to step back and say, hey, what are some things that I need to begin to remove and to replace in my life so that I could be working towards a healthier self? And so if it's a bad relationship, cut it off. If it's you engaging in negative conversation, cut it off. If it's you rekindling your family's relationship, do it. Whatever is necessary, begin to replace the negative so that you could begin to put into place positivity so that your life can begin to change for the better. I know it sounds like something fluffy or something unrealistic, but in actuality, it's something that is achievable, but we have to make that choice. Be sure to like and subscribe, follow, whatever. Where can they follow you at, man?
All right. So, okay. In closing, you can follow. Well, last thing I'll say, going back for like 2 seconds, go get a therapist. I'm not even teachers, students, go get a therapist. TRC Waco, Instagram, Facebook, the Relationship Clinic of Waco. You can contact me, trcwaco@gmail.com.
So as always, grace and peace. Listen, you had top-notch therapy coming to meet you where you are in the compound of your home. You didn't have to feel uncomfortable or anything like that. That's how simple it is. So be sure that you find someone locally. Like we said, not just your barber, not just somebody you hang out with, but make sure you seek professional help. As always, grace and peace.